We're joined now by Ahmad Shuja, a writer who has lived and worked in Kabul. Thank you for coming in on this important day. Tell us about your impressions in Afghanistan and how they've changed since the evolution of the Taliban and now to the rise of ISIL that we saw.
Absolutely. So the situation, as mentioned by your correspondent, Catherine James, has become much deadlier than it was 2 years ago, even than it was 6 months ago. Kabul, the capital, which used to be the most secure city in the country, is now the deadliest in terms of civilian casualties anywhere in the country. And that speaks to a combination of one-two combination of Taliban attacks, but also complex, massive casualty attacks by ISIS. There are several parts of the country, there are more parts of the country now controlled or contested by the Taliban than there ever was at any point since their ouster in 2002. And ISIS also is raising its head in certain parts of the country. And year on year, as Catherine said, it's become harder for people to go out to travel between provinces, to conduct business between provinces. We're seeing farmers who are not able to actually go to their farms, harvest, or work and water their plants. They're displaced and they can't come back. And so commerce has been affected, the economy, the whole spectrum of life. So
would more troops really make a difference on the ground there?
I think that's the eternal question.
Right.
In certain ways, it probably would. In one particular way, yesterday, the Afghan president announced that they're going to double the size of their special forces, which are the most effective fighting units in the Afghan army. Now, more advisors, more trainers, more troops is going to make that doubling of the special forces easier to manage and more quicker to do. And so that's an important aspect. The other important aspect is, it's not a military-only strategy solution in Afghanistan. Any strategy that the White House is expected to announce must, by consensus almost, take into consideration elements that are non-military that include a regional sort of diplomatic push as well.
And so what do you do about the Taliban in essentially baiting the Afghanis, offering services that the government just can't afford?
Right, and in some cases, that's also a reflection of the ability of the Taliban to finance their so-called courts, to finance their military, to finance the recruits that they're getting. And so any strategy that's not going to consider how the Taliban are able to make the money to finance their operations effectively as a shadow government in many parts of the country that they control is almost guaranteed not to do very well.
And what about Pakistan and the influence it has?
Yes, absolutely. Now, there's a debate about the levels of influence of the Taliban, of Pakistan over Taliban leadership, but it's absolutely clear that the Taliban leadership have their families who live in safety and security in Pakistan, who can travel back and forth in safety and security, who can actually use Pakistani airports to go in and out of the region on fundraising tours and diplomatic missions, whose fighters can actually go from Afghanistan into Pakistan to receive much-needed emergency medical treatment. So there's a lot that the Pakistanis could do that could cripple the Taliban operations and their ability to make money and work with their sponsors abroad.
You spent a lot of time there.
Absolutely.
What were some of your impressions on the ground?
It's become, so I lived a lot in Kabul. Over the last few years, it's become much harder to travel. It was harder to travel in the south because that's where the Taliban was, but now it's become harder to travel pretty much anywhere. The north is much more unstable thanks to a resurgence of the Taliban there. They've reactivated their old networks. ISIS is now present in certain pockets. The Islamic movement of Uzbekistan is present in certain pockets. There's been because of the breakdown in government control, there's been opportunistic criminal elements, armed elements, illegal groups that are there. So it's become harder to move around the country. It's also harder to move around in the capital city because of the threat, a very high-level threat of any kind of violence that's going to happen, be it magnetic bombs or large complex attacks or other things.
All righty. Well, Ahmad Shuja, we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you so much.